This week in games, Black Myth Wukong has weird guidelines for streamers, Indiana Jones might get a release date, and Xbox is reviving old Marvel games. This is the Two Penny Gamescast. What's poppin', players? Welcome back to the Two Penny Gamescast, episode 213. I am your host, Tavin Bothel, here with my good friend and co-host. Say hello to the people, Connor Elliott.
Hi, how you doing? My name's Connor.
It is. It is indeed. Connor, I'm back. You held it down last week, just you, because we had a bunch of technical difficulties happening, but you stepped up to the plate and you said, man, I could do it. Just me. Just me on my... I carried a team. So thank you for that. Good job. Good work. Good work. I love it. I love to see it. Anyways.
We were doing it by myself, but show must go on.
A lot of talking, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I bet.
I had a whole water case, water filter tracing system.
Right
next to me, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Right. How was your week besides that, Connor?
Oh, it was bliss.
Yeah?
I didn't have to deal with the dog's piss or shit, or letting him out of a cage, her out of a cage. My apologies. And taking her out to the bathroom. And then, most of all, I didn't have you here. And then when you left, it was just this nice calming effect that came over the place.
Yeah.
That was immediately disrupted when you walked through the door. I would have heard it. That would have come even before your voice if I had heard you start unlocking the door. But I didn't even hear that. So it was kind of more of an assault on my senses.
I don't know where this is coming from, Connor. I'm the perfect roommate. Calm, collected, clean.
Yeah.
I don't know why you would feel like you are at any more or less peace due to my presence.
I guess it's the thing that you have to work on then.
Hope you continue sleeping with the door locked.
I will continue. You know what?
I'll come in and I'll get you.
Funny enough, I didn't really do that when you weren't here because I realized I'm less worried about an intruder breaking in here and coming behind me and more worried about you doing it. I found myself not really minding as much. So, I'm going to lock it. Trust me, I'll lock it.
Okay. Well, I had a great week. I was on vacation, of course. I went up to Chicago to go visit my parents, my dad, my stepmother, of course. My stepmom, I should say, got me and my dad some tickets to Metallica. So we saw Metallica live. Great show. Let me tell you what. You're 60-something-year-old heavy metal artists, those boys still know how to rock.
I've noticed that. Like, I went to a Eagles concert, and those people are like some 60s, some 70s, I believe, at the time, and they played a 3-hour-long show. And just those old guys, I guess they've been used to it.
Consummate professionals, and they've been at it for a long time, and they know exactly what they needed to give. And it was a good show. It was a good show. I liked it a lot. Had a great time. Me and my dad had some great bonding, great dinners. My girlfriend was with me, of course, and so we had great family bonding moments as well, and great conversations. So it was just a great time, really relaxing. I've come back refreshed. I feel great. I feel good. Just doing my day-to-day thing. And of course, Connor, I went to school this morning.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm a college student. I'm a theater major arts college student, and one of my classes this semester is playwriting, in which we break down all of the elements of character and objectives and narratives and stories and how all of those things come to be. So I'm on my pretentious shit today. Let me tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, because of course this is the Two Penny Gamescast, where each week me and Connor come to you with the nerdy news you need to know concerning the video game industry. We each come to you with two topics, 2 pennies, if you will, and we give you our 2 cents on them. You can find this show every Tuesday, 8 a.m. Central Time, youtube.com/@2pennygames, or mainstream podcast services of your choice. Make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment down below with all of your thoughts. We do, of course, want an audience 2 penny segment in order to have your thoughts and opinions, or if you just have questions about maybe an evergreen topic or something you want us to talk about, we would love to address that as well. Connor?
Let's get right into the pennies.
Well, let me also remind the audience, of course, that they can catch this show live Monday afternoons, twitch.tv/2pennygames to watch us record live. We're not doing it this week. I assume you didn't do it last week, but we're not doing it this week because scheduling's a little weird. So we're gonna have a huge break in the middle before we do the Piggy Bank, which we also record live most Mondays, just not the last 2 weeks or whatever. So make sure you follow us on twitch.tv/TwoPennyGames and all of our social media chains down in the description below, as well as on TikTok. Follow TwoPennyGames on TikTok. We're doing great stuff over there. You can see some of those things broken out as YouTube Shorts as well, but make sure you go and follow us on all the platforms to get all of the great content that we're putting up every week. Connor!
Yep.
Let's go ahead and jump into our first topic of the day. Are you ready, sir?
I'm ready, yep.
Are you sure?
I am, yep.
Take your time code.
Fuck!
Yeah,
well,
I
hey,
got you.
You know
Caught
what?
you lacking right there, bitty boy.
I can, yeah. No coming back from that. Let's go into the story. We haven't.
Oh, you took it. You took it fast. So
hey, every day I do this. Every day, come on, Dad. Well, every Monday. This is an article from PC Gamer by Rich Stanton. Black Myth Wukong has some bonkers streamer guidelines about not using the game to spread, quote, feminist propaganda or discuss anything about China. Black Myth Wukong releases tomorrow. And this is an article that had come out on...
should be today.
I believe it was today.
I caught all this news today.
Being the 19th of August, 2024.
That's today.
And is really rather good. As PC Game... they plug whatever their stuff is.
They plug the thing.
87%. The game has run into a further controversy, however, over an email sent from its marketing team to content creators planning to cover the game at launch. Co-publisher Hero Games is distributing Steam keys to these individuals, which comes with a link to a Google document, verified by both IGN and Forbes, containing some rather wild conditions for coverage. The text consists of lists of do's and don'ts, with the former being simply enjoy the game. Before we get to the more questionable stuff, this includes some standard requirements that you get with almost any pre-release code, such as not insulting other streamers, offensive language, and humor. Then it veers off completely, saying that streamers playing Black Myth Wukong must not include, quote, nudity, feminist propaganda, fetishization, and other content that instigates negative discourse, end quote. This will immediately set off alarm bells because the major controversy over this game has been about a history of sexist remarks from developer Game Science's leaders, outlined in an IGN report last year. I think we covered that at the time.
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
Yeah, it does. The studio has gone bunker mode about these during the release period, as such as attitudes don't appear to permeate the game. But taking aim at, quote, feminist propaganda is a terrible look. Things don't get better. As the guidelines move on to the subjects that are sensitive within China, the home country of Game Science and Hero Games, streamers are told to not use, quote, trigger words such as quarantine or isolation or COVID-19, a requirement that seems to relate to various theories about the origin of the COVID-19 outbreak. Why any streamers would be doing that in the first place is a mystery, but there you are. Finally, it gets explicit. Do not discuss content related to China's game industry policies, opinions, news, etc. This one is quite weird, because Black Myth Wukong is loosely based on A Journey to the West, a classic Chinese novel and arguably the single most popular and influential literary text in Asia. Talking about Journey to the West without talking about China in some manner almost seems like an exercise in futility. Even if it is the real reason for overbearing guidelines like this is probably that Hero Games doesn't want streamers using its game as a jumping-off point to discuss wider allegations about the Chinese industry. There's an anti-China attitude that permeates some corners of the Western internet, though trying to tell Westerners what they can and can't talk about seems an extraordinarily bad way of dealing with it. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And here, I'll start this off with, this is weird. You know, especially from a Western perspective, it's very weird. And using terms like feminist propaganda raise a lot of red flags, especially with the developer's history of not being exactly the most progressive in terms of women.
What you mean by that is lacking basic respect for women?
Yeah, putting it very lightly. Listen, there are some things in here that I kind of understand from a Chinese perspective. And it's weird. We're not quite sure where this is all coming down from, whether it's Game Science or Hero Games being the developer and the publisher, or if it's a directive coming down from China themselves. This is, of course, who's the studio is Hero Games, right? And then
Game Science, the publisher, I believe.
Game Science is the publisher? Is what you're saying to me?
I believe so. Or it's two that might be, yeah.
The co-publisher Hero Games is okay. So yeah, Hero Games is co-publishing it with the thing. So we're not sure if this is coming down from the publisher, the developer, or China themselves, who have been known to be quite
authoritative.
Authoritative is a better word about their game releases and so forth. So it's a little odd. But some things like, hey, don't talk about COVID-19, quarantine, or just like Chinese politics in general, I can kind of understand them wanting to avoid that type of topic of discussion, especially because there is a large percentage of Americans who do things such as blame China as a whole for the COVID-19 virus. A little ridiculous, but I get it, whatever, and have given it the not so delicate name of the China virus, and so forth. So I kind of understand them like trying to cover their ass a little bit and be like, hey, we don't want to be the center of attention or controversy on this. We just want to release this game and this, that, and the third. I think it would have been better if you just said nothing at all, because the likelihood of any of these topics coming up during the game's press cycle and release, not very likely, in my opinion. Wouldn't be really something that would come up. Of course, that does kind of get thrown askew with the whole feminist propaganda. Using the words feminist propaganda raises a lot of red flags for me. That's not great verbiage.
It's a blanket statement. It's trying to, because once again, the comments...
but it's contextualized in a negative way.
Yeah, because I mean, once going back to the comments where they were just generally sexist to women, the whole thing about feminist propaganda in their eyes is probably just, you can say whatever you want about women, and saying that they have any right to not be talked about a certain way is feminist propaganda. I think the bar for what that exactly is not the exact same.
I think that... I just think that's being too generous, and maybe that is a Western perspective that I'm speaking from, but using words like propaganda is usually like a negative like conversation around it, as in like you are marketing in a social argument or a social stance in a obtuse way or something like that, or marketing it in a way to where people are blindly following it as opposed to knowing facts or things like that, which is ridiculous when you start talking about feminism as a movement and as a want for equal rights between men and women in the world. So like things like that, it's just phrased very strangely. I'm going to chalk it all up to cultural differences and just like sort of an authoritative state that China can be in video games and stuff like that. And so, but yeah, this overall I think is a weird choice to send it out. They also didn't send it out to reviewers, only to streamers and influencers. And it starts off fine with like, hey, don't bully other people, don't like enjoy the game, and like just don't outwardly be negative. And then it does go askew with the weird like feminist propaganda and the weird like COVID-19 stuff.
To that point, to why they're doing it to streamers is probably because they actually have power over whether they're able to stream their game. I'm assuming there has to be something connected to where if a company doesn't want you to basically advertise their game in that way, you can shut it down. I don't know exactly what the terms are for those kinds of things.
I don't know how you could shut down a stream of a game.
That's the weird thing, but I don't know why else they would particularly try and say this, unless they had some level of control on it.
Especially because Twitch and YouTube are American companies.
Yeah.
So that's it's just a weird outlook. Or at least Twitch is owned by an American company.
But you could possibly do like a copyright infringement because you violated some guideline and they have some... It would obviously not be like an easy, simple thing, I don't believe, but there could be legal action on some level.
Right. But again, I think undoubtedly this game is probably marketing, obviously, towards the Chinese market, but arguably I would say a lot towards the American markets as well, because the game kind of uses, or the game is a genre, it's an action game. So it's a genre that appeals to Western audiences a lot.
Yeah.
So like, you don't want to kind of spoil the crop with that, you kind of want to be on good graces with all that. And so I feel like sending out cease and desists or copyright infringements on things because you don't like what a streamer is saying while they're streaming the video game, that's not a good look. From a marketing perspective, that's a bad thing to do. But again, it would have been better if you just said nothing at all.
But I mean, that's the thing. Even beyond marketing, you had mentioned earlier how you don't know if this was their decision they made internally or if it's the Chinese government influencing things. regardless of who made that decision exactly, because I guess they could have been told by some Chinese official, hey, put out these restrictions because we want to, be controlling as we are. But it also could have been the team themselves, knowing that China can be very aggressive towards publishers that can allow this kind of stuff to happen. I mean, to show you how much influence they have over things, you have two incidents that really come to mind. Tencent, which was one of the biggest companies out there, and they basically said, we're going to limit how often people can play games in China under a certain age. Knowing that would affect the market of this giant growing company that has interests overseas, they didn't really seem to care. They still valued what they want as a society, culturally, and were basically able to beat the company down into submission, despite the fact they were as big as they were.
China over Tencent, is what you're saying. Okay, yeah.
And there was also that incident during the, I think it was the Overwatch tournament, where one of the contestants said he had a banner saying "Free Taiwan," and that person was later banned from those events. Yeah, and clearly there was some influence from at least interests in China trying to get that stuff squashed. Yeah, so they have some level of influence over these kinds of things, and whether the company can continue to prosper as it is, just releasing a normal game. So they might have just wanted to get ahead of everything and just cover all of their bases because they really want this game to be successful, rather than necessarily the Chinese government physically stepping in. It's hard to say. It gets muddled when it comes to it.
Yeah. I'm into everything you just said, where it's a matter of let's just cover our ass, not just for Western audiences, but just for the Chinese government as well, and make sure that everybody knows, hey man, we tried our best to avoid these things or whatever. Mm-hmm. So that does make sense to me. I still think it's weird that it went out for content creators and not reviewers. It's not part of the review embargo. It's only part of this for Twitch streamers and YouTubers and stuff like that. That is strange to me, that it was a weird stipulation for influencers only.
You see, that's why I was thinking there has to be something they can do on the legal back end of things, because I feel like you wouldn't have, I'm pretty confident you wouldn't have that at all with reviewers. That seems to kind of go under fair use, especially if they were sent a copy. It's not, no one's beholden to certain guidelines when doing reviews.
Fair use is only logical for United States.
Yeah, but it's also when you give out review copies of something, you can't just, demand control over that in some degree, because then it's not a review. You're just trying to get some, basically free PR, or, PR disguised as important news and unbiased criticism. So I don't know if that has a factor into it. That's why I thought at least there was a difference between doing it to streamers and doing it to reviewers. Some legal avenue that they can take with the streamers and not with the reviewers. But I don't fucking know. It's the basics of the story are weird on their own, much less the logistics of why they made it.
Yeah, indeed. And, things only get stranger and more unpredictable, you might say, Connor, as we move into topic number 2, which is your second penny of the day. So make sure you go ahead and take that nice little time.
I was already doing it. You didn't even say it. God damn it.
I know. I was buying you verbal time so that you could do what you got to do.
I did it immediately, Tavin. I did it immediately. I was ready. I was ready.
All right, talk to the people.
Article from Games Radar. Ali Jones, Manor Lords publisher, says game devs and big corpos don't get on because making games is, quote, fundamentally unpredictable. Manor Lords publisher believes that much of the games industry's current unrest stems from corporate desires that conflict with the game development reality. Speaking to GamesIndustry.biz, Snow Rui, CFO at Manor Lords, publisher Hooded Horse, was one of many indie publishers to discuss the wave of layoffs that has rocked the industry over the past 2 years. Quote, a lot of the cuts and unrest comes from public companies, shifting corporate priorities, Rui suggests. I believe there's some inherent tension between public companies' desire to have predictable revenue trending well at quarterly and annual intervals, and the reality of game development. That reality, Rue says, is fundamentally unpredictable both in timing and in results. In other words, massive corporations want to be making the same large amounts of money every quarter, and that's not really how game development works. Larger influxes of cash will come in and around launch and sales windows, but it's hard to predict what will succeed and what will fail. Manor Lords, a smash hit despite its niche genre, and mostly being made by a single person, is a perfect example of the fact that success can come from anywhere. The same is largely true of failure, but that's not something that really works for the bottom line of large corporations and their shareholders. That could be bad news for indie developers, but Rui points out that it might also be bad news for those same publishers, since devs can't simply decide to go work for themselves. Quote, self-publishing and the knowledge needed to do it, well, has never been more available, she says. publishers will really have to prove their value and offer good terms, as self-publishing is not a bad alternative right now, and that's as things should be, end quote. Hooded Horse, it's worth pointing out, does seem to be a notable exception to some of these concerns. Back in April, as Manor Lord surged up Steam's wishlist charts around its release, the company's CEO, Tim Bender, told Games Radar Plus that, quote, "We can ignore profits when we should. We're not non-profit or anything, but everyone agrees on it not being the only motive," end quote. That philosophy meant that the company could afford Manor Lords the delays it needed to launch it in the best way possible state. Not every company would afford a game that space, but if Rui's prediction that self-publication is more attractive than ever rings true, that might not matter for too much longer. So we've had a couple of stories break out recently of developers kind of spilling the beans of what exactly they think is wrong with the industry. Sven Finkel, the CEO at fucking Larian Studio, Sven something. He was one of the first, more notable figures from a game company to come out and once again point the finger at the, not as harshly as they do as Snowy Rui does in this video, in this article, but definitely points to the corporate side of things, kind of muddling up the process of making video games.
We had a conversation the other week from the Pal World devs saying, hey, the answer is not just to have games that never end. You know, it's more about that first release and you get a good chunk of change. Sure, some games like Fortnite and Apex and Warzone can, bring in consistent revenue and profit all the time. Sure, but that's not going to work for everybody, and it can't work for everybody. This is the continuing trend that we've been discussing on this podcast. I just kind of feel like, what would that be? 7th generation of consoles probably had it the best, where you could kind of predict release schedules a little bit better, and games could come out a little bit faster. We used to get entire trilogies on one generation of consoles. Now you're lucky if you get 2 games on one generation.
Yeah.
And so it's just led us to a very, very tricky spot, and in one where I kind of have to tip my hat to Nintendo, where they have set up their own dominoes in a way to where they can kind of predict what their releases are going to be, and when things like Metroid Prime 4 fall behind or have to restart development and things, it's not that big of a deal because they've got things set and ready and waiting in order to be released. Things like the Link's Awakening remake, things like there was another one recent, like the Luigi's Mansion games and so forth. We already know there's an HD Twilight Princess and what's the other one? The boat one.
Wind Waker?
Wind Waker. We know there's a Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD re-release just sitting on the shelf waiting. Mario Wonder was on the shelf for a long, long time. They're not rushing to get things out the door and released because they've just set up their business in a way where they can be a little more tactical in their releases so that their profit revenues can be a little bit more consistent. So, once again, Nintendo just kind of seems to be leading the industry in that way for the specific business model that they run, Mm-hmm. Whereas every other guy, you look around and you go, uh-oh, PlayStation doesn't have a major title coming in because they had to cancel their one Naughty Dog game that we're probably going to get this generation. That blows. And then, you look around and you go, well, Insomniac's trying to get these games out, but, they're spread a little thin because they're working on a bunch of projects. Or Bungie is spread thin because they were working on a bunch of projects. And, you just look at all these games that take so long to create. And I think the truth of the matter is we had a better sweet spot in the PS2 and PS3 generations with the 6th and 7th generation of consoles where games could kind of come out at a more frequent pace and developers, didn't have to work so long on one title before having to get it released. And one title didn't have to be a make or break thing for a studio. And one title didn't have to live longer than a couple of months before, it was deemed a failure or things like that. It was just the game came out, maybe there were some updates and some DLCs, and then we moved on and got to the next one.
And, tying that into Rui's comments, that's like the sweet spot which allowed for that more consistent revenue stream when you weren't doing what the industry standard is for many other games, which is to do, 6 years, 5 years of development to get out one game, which, depending on the kind of game it is, it might get you a lot of money months down the line because it's something that when people buy add-ons to it, if there's a multiplayer format or customization options or
I think
whatever.
Cyberpunk's a great example of that, where it came
Exactly.
out, probably didn't reap as many sales as it probably could have if it released in a better state. They had a big, I think they called it a 2.0 update or something like that. They had their big update, and then like a month later, Phantom Liberty came out, and so that brought an entire crowd back, and now has turned that game around in the public eye completely. I'm sure they got. I would imagine they practically doubled their sales.
And when it comes to Cyberpunk, though, that is kind of a unique situation.
You don't want that. You don't want to do that.
No, you don't. They had a lot of gas with their game, and then it failed. And the fact that it got some life pumped into it is what made people go back. Backing off of that,
However, there
hype
was
that
so much
behind it.
gas that it didn't fail.
It didn't fail. No,
know.
failed by their metrics certainly, but not commercially.
They still made money on that.
Yeah, they did.
They could have and moved on to the next Witcher, and it would have been fine.
Yeah, and since most game developers don't do that, they're stuck with the current model of games taking forever to make, which explains why there was this kind of desperation from companies. If we're taking this critique as a pinpoint accurate criticism of the industry, why live service games became so big. It's because it skirts around that long development cycle just to continuously get, money and money and money from all of these, different things that your live service battle royale game or whatever has to offer. And so, now that those are dying out, maybe we're going to see these developers these publishers, I should say, get more desperate. Because
but even then with the live service stuff, and we covered this the other week with the Bungie layoffs, but match that with another headline, the work of a live service is not working all the time either. It doesn't matter how successful it is or how well an expansion reviews or something like that. Layoffs still come in the back end because of corporate greed, because of XYZ reasons, being overly ambitious with your development timelines and stuff like that, to where, Destiny's The Final Shape did well, reviewed super well, sold really, really well, but it doesn't matter because a number of reasons that we talked about, and then they had a bunch of layoffs, and now you're getting headlines of Marathon not being in the best place right now. The development for that is not progressing in the ways that they would like it to, in that they need to find the fun in the game, So I think these games are too big. I think player expectations for games are too high, and everything needs to be stripped back to find a better balance for everyone across the board. At the same time, I'm looking at, there's been a trend on my social media feed lately of like looking back at past games that are a decade old, and they still look great. Battlefield 3, for example, still looks phenomenal. You could release it today, and it would still be thought of as like, wow, this game is beautiful type thing. The Mass Effect 2 and 3 still look good today by today's standards. A little dated, sure, but for the most part, still look pretty good by today's standards, The Witcher 3, when it released, I think still would hold up today and still look pretty damn good. So there are examples of these things where we don't need everything to be super detailed and all these things. Sure, it's great if they are, but not every game needs to be The Last of Us Part 2. Not every game needs to be Hellblade Senua's Saga, or things like that.
trust me, it does not.
And it's just like, all right, well then can we maybe pull back on some of that fidelity, just kind of focus on systems and get systems working and gameplay feel to feel great. Games don't need to look awesome. Listen, Rise of the Ronin looks like crap, and I didn't particularly enjoy it. You can check our review out on the channel, but there is a contingent of people who really, really like Rise of the Ronin and and it's one of their favorite games of the year, and it looks like crap, So there's a better balance that we can find here, and we're not finding it with the current state of things. So I think expectations on everybody's side, both developer, corporate, publisher, and player, consumer, need to come down a little bit.
And if it doesn't happen in the relative near future, you have people sounding the alarm of some kind of recession in the games industry.
A crash, crash. If we're not in the middle of it already, and we're just waiting for dominoes to fall at this point. Who knows? Moving on, Connor. Topic number 3, my first penny of the day. Report: Indiana Jones won't be an Xbox exclusive for long, coming to PS5 shortly after. I do want to pause and remind the audience, we record these on Monday afternoon. Gamescom is Tuesday afternoon, the afternoon after this releases. So everything that happens at Gamescom, we won't be able to talk about it. Jeff Keighley's kind of talked about it at length online, so we're going to see things like Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. I think he said like Warhammer is going to be there or something. I could be wrong. Yeah, and there's going to be a number of other things there that he's already confirmed, which looks great. But we're just not going to be able to talk about it here. Sorry. And on top of that, we're probably getting the release date for Indiana Jones tomorrow. Indiana Jones won't be an Xbox exclusive for long, coming to PS5 shortly after. This is from Ethan Gach over at Kotaku. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is supposed to be the big console and Game Pass exclusive for Xbox this fall, but it won't be long until it comes to PlayStation 5 too, according to new reports. The port has been rumored for months and is the latest Xbox game to lose exclusivity and amid Microsoft's new multi-platform push. Indiana Jones, which is being made by Machine Games, the studio best known for 2014's Wolfenstein: The New Order and its sequel, doesn't yet have an official release date, but is expected to arrive on Xbox and PC by the end of 2024. According to podcaster and industry insider Nate the Hate, the game will only have a short window of console exclusivity before it arrives on PS5 in the first half of 2025. Backing up his claim, Inside Gaming reports that this news has already been shared with some media outlets under NDA. I think kind of take some of that with a grain of salt. You know, first half of 2025, I don't fully expect that one to be true, but I could definitely see Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones is a game you want to sell, and you want to sell as many and as much as you can, so it makes sense to put it on multiple platforms. Now, again, is that a strong selling strategy for Xbox as a console manufacturer? I wouldn't say so, but if this secures the jobs for everybody under the Microsoft/Xbox gaming wing, I've got no real big problems with that. I think we're going to release it a few months later, and that doesn't sound likely to me. You're going to want to at least probably get a year out of it, right? Like, because that, anything less than that, you start wondering, why am I subscribed to Xbox Game Pass? Why am I buying an Xbox Series X? When all of these things just come to PlayStation within 6 months. That's kind of ridiculous. So yeah, I don't know about that. And I would imagine, first half of 2025 is weird, right? Because there's no way they're putting it on PlayStation less than 6 months after the game released, right? There's just no way. So you got to look at that and you start doing the math. First half of 2025. Well, if the game comes out in November, as a lot of theories have been, then that would kind of make a little bit of sense because it would be in the first half, 6 months later, type of thing. But yeah, again, will Indiana Jones come? Maybe. But is it a guarantee? I don't know.
Yeah, it's always weird to hear these kinds of stories. Now, on the face of this, this is actually good news because the idea of locking games behind certain platforms is a pretty ridiculous, outdated model.
It's pretty stupid.
Yeah, but it's a difficult question for Microsoft because they have such emphasis on their Game Pass, and what little exclusives they have, and yet they continuously seem to just hand it back over to PlayStation, which is good for the consumer. But what's Xbox going to look like in a little bit down the road? They've already laid off a bunch of people. Is that going to happen more? Is there some kind of evening out now that they did do those cuts, and you're going to actually see them starting to make a profit off of their Game Pass and not have to worry about things like this?
Yeah, it's all cool. It's just that would work better if the other guys were doing it as well, and the other guys aren't going to do it,
and they don't seem to have an incentive to. They're winning on the game console market, and
yeah,
if people have your console, they're going to play games on your console.
And I think it's specifically because both platforms, being the Nintendo Switch and PlayStation, have clearly set the standard for what their console is going to provide you. You want cream of the crop, cinematic experiences, great storytelling, just absolute premier video games. You're going to go to the PlayStation 5, right? But if you want something fun, something for the family, something for your kids maybe, but also still have a good mix of like fun games that full-grown adults can enjoy or everybody can enjoy, Nintendo Switch. Is it going to be the most powerful games on the market, the most pretty-looking games on the market? No. Does it need to be? Clearly not. Mm-hmm. And again, leads to my point of, hey, we can pull the expectations back. But on top of that, what is Xbox's identity right now? They don't really have one. They almost did, and then they closed down Tango Gameworks and sold them off to Krafton, which, by the way, great analysis on that. I'm so excited to see Tango Gameworks being revived from the dead and the continuation of Hi-Fi Rush. That's super exciting. I saw headlines that they're getting more than half of their staff back, which is fantastic.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff over there. So, when we talk about Microsoft and Xbox and their strategies here, I get it, but I don't. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter as long as the games are selling and they're making the money off of it, but it just continues to beg the question of why buy an Xbox then? Now, if Xbox wants to get out of the console market, fair be it. Go ahead. The consoles as an idea are about to go away anyway. You can feel the tides turning to streaming. They're going to happen, and Xbox has a leg up on that, right? So, how essential long-term is going to be able to sell a box going to be? Who knows, right? It could be that, in another 10 years, we could just all not have boxes anyway. So it's a tricky thing. And so in that sense, it doesn't matter if you're selling on PlayStation or Switch or, or you can just stream it directly to your TV and you only have to buy a controller type thing. Like these things will matter less and less as we continue forward. It's just right now in the moment, it's a weird choice.
Yeah, I guess we'll see how this plays out for them, Will they crash and burn? I don't fucking know.
I don't think any of these companies are going to crash and burn. I think we're too...
Never say never.
Never say never, but I think they're too well established at this point for anything like that. But will we see another Xbox generation of consoles? Who knows? Maybe. Probably not. I think they're going to get just kind of upgrades to the Series X and Series S or whatever, but there's not going to be a full next generation Xbox ever again.
I've said it before. They could do a handheld,
Everybody should be doing a handheld. The handheld is ridiculous. Why are we not doing this right now?
People aren't. So, hey, Microsoft
clearly
can jump in.
People want it. PlayStation, clearly we want it. Make one. Anyways, my dog got excited about that. Anyways, Connor, moving on to our final topic of the day. This is a fun one. But again, just a rumor. Take it with a grain of salt. Rumor, this is from comicbookresources.com by Sam Feng. Xbox reportedly reviving old Marvel Activision games. Microsoft might be working with Marvel in order to license Deadpool and Marvel Ultimate Alliance video games for Xbox. The two titles were originally published by Activision, but the company lost the rights several years ago, resulting in the games no longer being available for purchase. A rumor reported by Tech for Gamers indicates that Xbox plans to capitalize on the massive success of Marvel's Deadpool and Wolverine film by relicensing its Deadpool and Marvel Ultimate Alliance ports. Activision, which was recently acquired by Microsoft, originally published the games, but Marvel now Marvel now retains the rights to the games and the characters, which has made it so the games have been unable to be purchased. Nick Baker from Xbox Era discussed the rumor on a recent episode of the website's podcast, saying Microsoft is looking to bring two games back for PC and Series consoles. Nothing has been officially been confirmed by Marvel or Microsoft at this time. And I think that makes perfect sense. There is a want for those games to come back. There is a desire for those games to come back, whether it's Ultimate Alliance, Deadpool, some of the old Spider-Man games that are kind of just lost to time over this. Of course, I'm a big video game. What is it called?
Connoisseur?
Not restoration. What is the word I'm looking for? Preservation. I'm big on video game preservation. In general, so any attempt to bring back an older title to newer platforms and kind of make it available for purchase and available for play on modern hardware is always a plus for me personally. I didn't play the Deadpool one. Marvel's Ultimate Alliance holds a special nostalgic place in my heart, even though I know that game isn't as good as I remember it being and so forth, but it's nostalgic for me and I like it. And then, just always having the option to go back and revisit these games is always a plus here.
Yeah, my knowledge of I didn't really play Marvel games at that time. Spider-Man and whatnot, they just kind of didn't appeal to me all that much. And the quality doesn't seem that high to me, but that doesn't matter. It's as you said. regardless of the quality of a game or whether you like it or don't like it or have a special fondness or not, the fact is that games need to be preserved, as you were saying.
Yeah.
And, I remember we had covered a little while ago, didn't an organization start up that's goal was to preserve video games? Or Nintendo or some other had some division that was working on that. I think that's what it was.
Nintendo or PlayStation or something, but it was like a third party thing. It's not like an in-house thing and so forth. So but these games are locked up under so many different licenses and rights to be released and so forth. So it's really, really tricky. But Microsoft pushing the effort now that they own Activision makes sense. Kind of falls in line with some of the rumors and whisperings we've been hearing of stuff going on behind the scenes of what they're trying to do after that big Activision purchase. All of this makes sense. Cut a deal with Marvel Games, which I'm sure is looking to get a little bit more cash under their belt as well. This is a smart move. It won't take a lot of work to get up and running, and might as well just sign a deal, cut a check, and let's all celebrate in some good games.
Free money. And hey, we just talked about Xbox kind of having a weird thing with we don't really know how they're differentiating themselves in the video game market when compared to Nintendo Switch and PlayStation. Maybe bringing back old games is an avenue to try and get a little bit more gas in their engine.
I don't think that's a good idea.
No?
There was also all the rumors of, Forza Horizon coming to PlayStation is allegedly the next big Xbox title to jump ship. And then I also heard, there's always rumors of Halo jumping ship. So, it's a tricky balance. And so I offer the question up to you. What games would you like to see jump ship from Xbox to PlayStation? We've seen Hi-Fi Rush. We've seen Sea of Thieves jump ship. What else would you like to see and be able to play on other platforms from the Xbox catalog, or vice versa? What from the PlayStation side do you want to play on Xbox? Helldivers? I said it at release. Put Helldivers 2 everywhere. It doesn't make sense that it's not everywhere. Let me know down in the comments below how you feel about that.
Bring back Gears of War 3 multiplayer. It was fun. I remember.
I'm sure, but there's a lot of fun multiplayers out there.
Bring them all back.
Bring them all back.
Yeah, why not?
There's definitely nobody playing. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be it for your Two Penny Games cast. Make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below for future topics and discussions. And remember, you can get this show every Tuesday, 8 a.m. Central Time, youtube.com/@2pennygames, and mainstream podcast services of your choice. Until next time, have a great time. And Connor, say goodbye to the people.
Have a nice day.